All right, I guess I'm the moderator. How about that?
You're
I
the
love that.
moderator.
I love this.
What do you want to know, Tom?
You know what, Bob? Here's what it is. I'm going to pick your brain, and you're going to pretend to tell us everything you know, and we'll walk away entranced by all of your bullshit and horseshit. I've been listening to it for goddamn years, so I'll put up with it for a while. I want to start with this story that Bob told me a long time ago. You might recognize it. It is the beginning of Bob's being here, and it is reflective of why you are all here as well. I'm going to set the scene. In a basement rec room on the south side of Chicago, a very young man is staying up late watching TV. How old was that very young man, Bob?
He was a sophomore in high school.
Okay, he's a sophomore in high school. What year was this, Bob?
Probably like 1966.
Think of yourself as a sophomore in high school in whatever year that was, but we're in 1966. Bob, tell us this story.
So this program I'm watching is the Johnny Carson Show. And before this, I've always been fascinated with movies. I love movies. I always wanted to figure out how they did them. I didn't know. I loved watching action movies, westerns, war movies, anything with special effects in it, I love to watch. So I was watching this show, and Johnny's guest was Jerry Lewis. And they were sitting on the sofa, and Johnny said to Jerry Lewis, "So I understand you're a professor." And he said, "That's right. I teach at USC. I teach at the School of Cinema." And I stood up in the room, and I said, "School of Cinema? Does such a place even exist?" And the next day, I went to the public library, and I went through all the, college catalogs, and I found USC, and I went to the School of Performing Arts, and then I went to the cinema department. It was only a department, obviously, back in those days. And I opened up this book, and there was a photograph of Alfred Hitchcock standing in front of a classroom. And I thought, I've got to go to California, and I've got to go to film school. And
sound familiar, anybody? Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Bob.
Yeah.
How did you think it worked prior to there being such a thing as a school for cinema?
I had no idea. I had no idea how it actually happened. I remember the next year seeing Bonnie and Clyde has a very moving scene in there where Gene Hackman gets shot. And I fell in love with these characters, as we all do when we see this movie. And he was dying in this field. And I remember being just emotionally moved by this. And I remember having the thought at that moment, wow, there's real power here. And I got to figure out what this power is. I've got everything I could get my hands on to read about filmmaking. And then all of a sudden I found out, oh, wait, there's a writer and there's a director. And then I started, you saw some of my work, I started with an 8mm movie camera, started making stop-motion animation movies. And
how old were you when you started making those movies yourself by hand?
Maybe a freshman. I got a Super 8mm camera that I could do one frame at a time. I was a big fan of Walt Disney, by the way, too, and all the Disney movies. So
thank you.
And so I loved animation. I was fascinated with animation. Yeah.
Sorry. Some people have said that animation is the truest form of filmmaking because you literally start from nothing and you create everything, including the lighting and whatever.
Well, I had to do animation because I had to have my actors do what I wanted them to do.
Right. Yeah, and familiar with that.
And when you're a freshman in high school, your actors get bored after like 10 minutes.
Did you work with buddies who were in movies? I worked
with my cousins and my sister. My sister was my main actress.
I'm going to ask some questions about the specificity of movies. If you name a movie that came out in the 60s or 70s, the 80s that I saw, I could tell you the theater that I saw it in, right, where you lived. I saw Swiss Family Robinson at the Grand Lake in Oakland. I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey at the Century Domes on Hagenberger Road in Oakland. I saw How the West Was Won at the Golden Gate in San Francisco. Where did you see Bonnie and Clyde?
I saw my very first. There were 3 movie theaters in walking distance of the. I grew up on the far south side of Chicago, in the shadow of the Pullman shops, and there were 3 movie theaters that were within walking distance of my house: the State, the Normal, and the Roseland. I saw my very first movie ever at the Roseland, which was The Blob.
Oh, Steve McQueen.
Yeah, of course. So anyway, I saw Bonnie and Clyde at the State.
Okay. The Blob. By the way, who's seen The Blob recently? Anybody? Okay, The Blob. You tell me if Steve McQueen is not the most modern performance you've ever seen in that little tiny movie. He is unlike anybody else in movies even in that movie.
And if you don't believe it in that movie, go see Bullet.
Oh, even more so later on.
Because
right. Steve McQueen. All right, so The Normal, that was the thing?
It was called The Normal because it was on Normal Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all
right.
Okay.
And by the way, none of these theaters are there anymore, sadly.
Sadly.
Right.
About how often did you go to the movies as a kid?
We actually, now you have to understand, these were second run houses.
They were second run houses.
These were always scratched prints, and I remember watching the movie, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes into the movie, the color would shift, and I'd turn around and I'd look and I'd say, "Oh, the light's coming from another port," and that's where I learned about changeovers, because the prints were scratched, they were dirty, and But,
so a second run. Who remembers second run houses? All right, right.
Right.
They'd be a little cheaper, maybe, but
they'd be 6 weeks old.
At least, If it was a big movie, it played in some other theater downtown Chicago or San Francisco. Or
and we
Oakland.
always went on Tuesday night because my mother got in for free. No, that was what we did. We went to the movies on Tuesday night.
Wow.
Yeah.
In for
that
free.
was ladies' night.
Would you look at these movies that were coming in a second run, and would you rush in order to see them because you couldn't get downtown and see them in the better screens on the better prints earlier on?
People who grew up on the south side of Chicago when I was a kid, they did everything on the south side.
Okay.
So we waited for the movies there. Right?
But you went regularly.
Then, like now, it was always the most inexpensive form of entertainment.
There was interesting what Bob said when we came in, that there's always been innovation in it. There were, depending on what myth you read, there were some people that actually did say sound was going to ruin the art form of motion pictures, because when you looked at it, the sound was horrible in those. If you look at a movie like on TCM that was made in 31 or 32 and 33, it's all this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, well I'm gonna tell you right now, buddy, and it's just terrible and it's boring. And in actuality, at that time, a great silent film was a cinematic masterpiece, opposed to this very primitive kind of thing. Later on, of course, if you saw the early 3-stripe Technicolor films in the late 1930s, it did not look great. It looked too fake. It was colorful. So you have always been this guy that found out about something that you could do in a movie. If you start with something like used cars or some of your early features, let's applaud them all one after another.
Thank you.
When you had the money and when you were actually making a motion picture, to make money,
it never started that way. The way it always started was, how can we do this in some way that has never been seen before? I would gather my team, and then someone would say, well, there's this thing called a Steadicam. Or there's this thing called, a split diopter, and those were the early things. And okay, well, maybe we can figure out a way to do it. I never walked around and said, I want to do a movie where I can use a Steadicam.
Right.
I never did that. People say that I'm, an innovator, and I appreciate that and whatever. But what I think we're supposed to do as filmmakers is entertain. And I think that by presenting images and movies and stories to people that they've never seen before, is kind of entertaining. And it doesn't, and it can be it can be drama, it can be horror, it can be whatever.
Okay, I'm going to tell a professional show business story about working with Bob right now, okay? And he just said it himself, something that had never been, somebody has not done before. In Forrest Gump, it's probably, we were shooting on like a Friday, you know, we were down at the Wilshire Ebell Theater. That's where the set was, and it was for when Forrest was in the hospital in Vietnam after being wounded. And all the scene was a guy walks in and says, Private Gump, and I say, yes, sir. And he says, you have just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's all it was in all the thing. And Bob, you know, we'd been working all day long, and we probably had, what, an hour and 45 minutes left in order to get this thing? And Bob was saying, sorry, I'm going to do an imitation of you now, Bob.
No one does it better.
Well,
Do my voice too.
and I will. And we might use some salty language, so let's all be grown-ups here. And he would say, he was just sitting there. And understand, the clock is ticking, and, you know, it's expansive. So, well, how the fuck are we going to do this shot? And I said, well, here's an idea, Bob. I've made a few films. And if I'm standing here or sitting here, and the guy comes in and says, are you Private Gump? What if I stand at attention? And then he says, you have just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's what I said to Bob. And Bob said, well, hell, anybody could shoot that. Then he thought, and within, I'm going to say, a nanosecond, you know what we're going to do? Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. All right. Put the ping pong table up on its side, and Forrest will be practicing ping pong, all right? And he'll just be hitting the ball against, you know what we'll do? And we'll put this little piece of tape right here, a little 2-inch square piece of tape. And Forrest will just be sitting there, and it'll go really, really fast. He'll be just hitting the ping pong ball right in that center, right in that piece of tape, 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 right in that piece of tape. And then the guy will come in and say, are you a Private Gump? And then you'll stop, and you stand and you say, yes, sir. And then he'll give it to you. How about that?
Yeah, but then you had a... Yeah. But here's the great thing about working with Tom is he'll go, okay, and then he says, what do I do with the ball? And then it's like, well, you have to palm it. Then you have to be a magician.
The
ball.
Ping pong ball was digital. That was added. I just waved my paddle like this and went tugada. But with the standard it is, and I was going to have to put the ball and the ping pong paddle on the table, and the ball would have to be under the ping pong paddle, but there was no ball in the shot. So I actually had it in my hand, and I was going diggada. When the time came, I just went like that. And so you see the ping pong ball under the paddle. So it's one shot. Happened very, very quickly, but it started because Bob Zemeckis said, "How the fuck are we gonna do this?" Anybody can shoot that.
But here's the thing. We talk about these visual effects and stuff. They only work because the actor makes them work. And Tom never chafed under any of that, bending himself in a pretzel and having to do this and that. He never said, well, it's going to destroy my performance if I have this ball in my hand, you know?
Well, that gets into this thing, Bob, of how you said it also here. You never said, hey, there's this way of doing a shot that I want to do. It's not. It's like, what is the story here? What is the narrative? And what tool in the box or in my imaginations can we use in order to tell this in the most unique way possible so it lands? Bob does this thing, and he does it in all the films that we did. We all have to agree in the cast what the red dot is in the scene. We get together for weeks, everybody, all the cast members and the writer, and we talk for weeks. We start at the first page and we work through the script, and if we get to the end of it, we go back to the first page again and continuously work through the script. And everybody can comment on anything. Sally Field could talk about Bubba. Eric Roth, who wrote it, we could all talk about any scene that we were in, anything that was in the movie, because Bob was always saying, oh, well, look, on the day when the sun is shining and going down and the clock is ticking, there can be no confusion about what that red dot is, what must happen in the scene. And what we don't, I mean, we could talk about that till the cows come home, but what the translation goes is through Bob's head is how to shoot it. And shooting it can often require something that we can't imagine because we're just a bunch of stupid actors who want close-ups, and we all just hear blah, 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 blah. My line, bullshit, 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 my line. And you have to take into account. And no actor can be intimidated by the reality. By the way, did you just notice the first shot there, Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox. This is what a lot of times you have to do this in a Bob Zemeckis movie. Did you see the way he did? He was down like this, and he went up like. And Bob will say, just a little slower. Because he knows what we're all going to be looking at. And so there is a physicality along with everything else. Because the other thing, this is one thing you said when we started working, and it's almost true, the editor of Bob's movies, for much of the movie, just has to remove the slates because it all works in one. The scene, the red dot, is taken care of in a shot. And then that's it. You even apologize when you have to shoot coverage, right? We know what coverage is, right? AFI students, close-ups, 2 shots, reverses, all the roundy rounds. You don't like to do that.
Sometimes it's important. You have to show the audience where the gun is. You have to cut to that. If the scene's well written, and you have really, really competent, talented actors, there's an energy having the actors all in the same frame, performing at the same time, without imposing the tool of editing on it, unless you absolutely need to. And if you can make it work, I think it's really much more powerful than cutting around.
Well, you end up losing fluidity and malleability, though. Something like if
you have to be confident that the scene's working.
Exactly.
You say, okay, let's try this in one, and you do it, and I'm there sitting there. Oh, I'm going to have to cover this because I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this is. I don't think this scene's going to make it in its entirety in the final movie. I got to figure out a way to take 30 seconds out of the middle of this. And so then I'll say, okay, well, we got to do some coverage just to be able to have that happen. So it all comes down to being 100% comfortable with the scene that you're shooting.
Do you walk away from a scene, the day's work, satisfied 100%? Or do sometimes you walk away saying, oh, man.
So I've been doing these things for film schools my whole life, talking about, and when I'm asked, what does a director do? And my answer is, he compromises. And that's what I do. Every single day, I compromise. I get in the car, and I'm doing a shot list, and I've got this magnificent idea for shooting this scene. I've got like a list of 20 setups that are going to be fantastic. By lunch, we haven't got the first setup yet.
Well, yeah.
And then by 4 o'clock, I'm there going, I just got to get enough coverage to put this thing together. Compromise, because you're going to get there and it's going to go, oh yeah, so I thought the door was going to be on that side of the room. Okay, now it's on this side of the room. And oh wait, that one doesn't open. And so it's like every day you're in there and you're just sort of compromising your vision. But what you got to do is you got to take that and try to make it even better than what you've got. By using that. You don't have that problem in animated movies, right? Because you do everything that you want it to do, but then you got to think of everything. So what you you get when you're making a live action movie is you get these magnificent accidents, and you have an actor, read a line that is beyond what you ever thought, and you go, oh my God, that's fantastic. Now I got to do that. I got to have him do that in a close up, or you'll have a beautiful, very few times this happens, you'll have a magnificent sunset, and you actually can get the shot in time. Usually you have a magnificent sunset, but they don't get the camera on fast enough. There's a problem. Oh, we got to get there's something that they left in the truck. You have to go get it. And then the sun goes down, and, then now your beautiful sunset shot is a gray sky. That's usually what happens. But, it's all good.
We're here. We're on the Dog and Pony Show, right? The Celebrity Mule Train right now, and all of America will not be able to escape references to here between now and November 1st. No matter how little TV you watch, you can block billboards out of your vision as you're driving. You will not be able to escape references to here. So I apologize right off the bat at the merciless merchandising campaign, that marketing that's just, we're going to hold America hostage, goddammit, until they see this, until they see some version of the movie. This here came about, and we'll see a clip later on about it. Here came about because my involvement in it, anyway. When did you start working on here as an idea?
You and I were talking about the Truffle Hunters.
Yes.
And you were talking, and I was saying, did you see that movie? Every scene takes place in this magnificent tableau. And you said, yes, that's the kind of thing that we should do. You would say we should do something that's so innovative.
All right, I'm going to do another Bob Zemeckis imitation, okay? Can you handle this? All right, so long time ago, we might have been working on something I can't remember. Bob came in and said, "Man, I saw this crazy thing. I was watching this documentary, and it starts with a shot, and I couldn't figure out how did they get that shot? What is this shot? It was like in the back of some Jeep, and it was going down this bumpy road, and you can see the driver, and there's palm fronds, and it's raining, and it's crazy, and the camera's like looking out the window and looking at the cage and coming around and going down and looking around, and I can't figure out how did they get this rig inside the back of this Jeep? I can't figure out how did they get this shot? What did they use? What kind of camera was it?" And then the car stops, and it's all jerking around, and the camera's whipping around like crazy, and the driver comes around, and he comes out, and he opens the back of it, and the camera comes out of the Jeep, and it's suddenly down in the weeds, and I realize that they put the camera on a dog. You remember that?
Yeah, that was in the Truffle Hunters.
That was in the Truffle Hunters.
Exactly.
And so I end up watching this odd documentary called The Truffle Hunters, kind of like, what's on? You want to watch that? No. You want to watch that? No. You want to watch that? Oh, what's a documentary? I don't know. That's why I did not know it. And when it started with this Jeep going down a thing and a camera whip around, I said to my wife, "This is a scene that Bob talked about." And then we watched the rest of the movie, and so much of it is told in these you just call them tableaus that go on for a very long time, 8, 9, 10 minutes. There's one in there with just a guy being served eggs with truffles in a restaurant. The camera never moves, and we were making Pinocchio. Thank you. We were making making Pinocchio. In a Zeppelin hangar right next to where they were making the Batman. That they were shooting that in the other Zeppelin hangar, and I kept saying, "Hey, let's have a gang fight with a cast of Pinocchio versus the Batman." I think it would have been, we'll take on those guys playing cops from Gotham City, because we'll have our little children from the thing. Where was I going with this? Oh, and it was there that we were sitting around talking about. When I mentioned this about the Truffle Hunters, we were in your office. I said, "I wonder if we could do that." And you literally said, "Funny you should ask that question, Tom," because you had the graphic novel by Richard McGuire, and you had a draft of the script that you had written with Eric. You did not have a draft.
All I had was the novel, and you went and got it that night on Kindle.
Yes,
at the hotel.
That's right.
The next morning, you came in and said, "This is fantastic." And I said, "Great. Let's finish this movie. I'll start thinking about it." Literally, when we wrapped, I got a call from Eric Roth saying, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And I said, "Funny you should call right now, because Tom and I were just talking about this graphic novel called Here, And he said, "Oh, I don't know what it is. Let me find out." He got it.
Anybody familiar with it? Anybody familiar with the graphic novel? Okay.
Everybody, no one?
Just as well.
Okay,
Good.
You'll be familiar.
I had to like read it through like 3 times in order to figure out.
Anyway, that was the birth of it.
Okay.
We're going to get to it.
We will in fact get to it. What's that? Am I supposed to?
I think these are.
Oh, these are them. Okay, I had this. Okay, all right.
Now
All
time
right.
for some clips.
All right. So here's what I want to say.
We should just do them one right after the
Wait,
other.
no, we'll have
Okay,
30
okay.
seconds in order to talk about
Okay.
it. Because here is a movie that is unlike anything you have seen. Once you see it, you will have seen it, and then it'll be familiar to it. Here, we're going to show 3 clips prior to the clip of here. But each one of these movies, before you saw them, were unlike anything you had ever seen. So you're seeing some combination of Bob's imagination, the screenwriting, the narrative story technique, the cinematic aspect, the special effects, everything melded into like a fine shuffle of cards into an absolutely 100% unique movie to you, the theater. And just think about, if you can, the movie theater that you saw these in when they first came out. Let's roll. I'm not going to tell you what they are because you'll recognize them instantly. Let's roll with clip number 1. Out loud, everybody just say the theater that you remember seeing that movie in for the first time. Just say it out loud if you can remember what it is. Okay, there you go. See, right.
Oh, great.
As memorable a night in the movies as you were going to have, because you had not seen that amalgam of so many things really ever before. The special effects,
The most elaborate effect in that scene is when the license plate is spinning, because it was built on a special table that we had to build out on the parking lot of the back lot at Universal. With asphalt on it, and it had a motor device underneath with a little pin that retracted, and so it spun the license plate, and we had to put the flame on it, and that insert spun the license plate. The little rod retracted and flipped the license plate down.
See, other filmmakers would have been satisfied with just, the prop guy spinning a metal plate, on the night that you shot it. And you do it like
that would have never worked.
All right, let's also talk about. All right, because you guys are, this is AFI, and everybody's going to have to make movies. How many nights in a row out of that shopping center did you shoot that whole sequence?
We shot the whole movie at night, because poor Michael J. was doing
He was
family
doing
ties
family
during
ties
the day.
at the time. So that actually gets into this whole other aspect of making movies, is that there is a human cost to doing this. This takes time and effort and exhaustion, and you have to be pushed to the place where it's a marathon.
All of you know, movie making is very time intensive. It really is. It just takes a lot of time to make a movie.
Well, how many elements went into just like that one shot of them turning around and looking?
You had to have the art department build the asphalt. You had to have the physical effects guys build the rig to make it work, test it. Then you had to have the guys come in and lay the fire down, and then the camera department had to come and light it so it matched. And it was like, it took a whole day to do that.
That's a lot of stuff to keep. Okay, we're going to go on to the next clip here of a movie. We agree. Here's another one that you had never seen this movie until you sat down and this movie began. Clip number 2, please.
You want to tell them how you carried Bubba?
Well, there were so many elements to this. They built a huge truss on wheels on things, and Michael T. was actually suspended by wires and cables with just enough slack so that I had to lift his body up just a little bit, but then slide it along this long track. And all of that was taken out somehow in the course of the visuals. We were never in danger in there. Those explosions happened on a different day, we weren't even anywhere near it. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Because there's other elements that we really were by a river. Those really were helicopters that were coming down, and it still got put back. Yeah. But this is the other thing I talked about, Bob, because there's the technical aspect of it. But originally, the Vietnam sequences in the original script, when we first got together and talking, were essentially comedy pieces. They were like Buck Privates. They were like Abbott and Costello. And Gary Sinise, in his indomitable way, says, "There's no way we can have Vietnam in this movie and not take it motherfucking seriously." And Bob said, "Well, how would we do that?" And I said, "Well, right now you have them like goofing their way through this thing, Bubba and but you know, wouldn't he be kind of like be able to survive boot camp just because he's really good at doing what he's told?" And he's so good at doing what he's told, he'll be the best private in boot camp. He'll put his rifle together faster than anybody else. And that's literally what ended up happening. And what we have now is this very serious movie about Vietnam that is in the middle of this whole other kind of movie. Bob Zemeckis said his absolute best. All right. Once more, clip number 3 is a movie that you had never seen in many, many different ways, and we'll talk about it after you take a look at clip number 3.
All right, there are three things I want to say about Castaway, and one is talking about innovation in cinema, and the thing that I fell in love with was when you said, "What would it be absolutely really like if a modern man was really stuck on a deserted island, not with the girl, the pirates don't show up." Remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And it's like, what would it really be like? Is it possible to make a movie that would be absolutely real, and what his struggle would be in complete reality? So that is what made me fall in love with that movie. The other thing is, for anyone who's interested in looking at the movie from a directorial style point of view, we didn't bring a dolly. We didn't bring any lights. We brought only a camera and a tripod to Fiji, and it was interesting. What we came up with was the idea that the camera only moves on the lens nodal point, pans and tilts in the whole time that we're on the island. And then Tom had to work within that frame, so the camera would start moving like a surveillance camera. It never followed Tom. It did its own thing, and Tom had to work within that frame. But then once we got off the island, and of course there was no music on the island. It was only sound effects, surf and wind.
There's a lot packed into that, because in that we worked on that for 6 years. Bill Broyles and I sort of like had the first act. Bill Broyles came in, and he brought the second act. And then we talked to you twice, and then we came back like a year and a half later, and you said, "I can't get that thing." But we did not have that third act, and you brought in the concept of facing his own death. And in that scene, 2 of the key elements of life are created. One is fire, shelter, water, food, and fire. Fire is one, but then the 5th element to stay alive is company, and that's the birth of Wilson, that you said, I think he's got to come out of Chuck somehow, and we came up with the blood on the volleyball.
And Tom designed him. Yeah. Because I kept saying that to you. I said he comes from you. Yeah. He's physically your blood. You have to draw. And you kept putting it off, and then I think the morning of, he sat down with a piece of cloth and the red paint, and he said, "Here he is."
Two things happened. Robin, our prop guy, immediately scooped it up and went off and made like 27 exact copies of it. You know, that's one thing that has.
It's like, "Hey, Robin, here it is."
And as far as the island goes, you see those cutaways to Wilson? Those were my only shots off. That was the only time I was not on camera. So okay, Tom, we're gonna get Wilson's coverage here. I got back to my hut that there was built on this
Right,
powerless
right.
island. As soon as I opened the screen, okay, Tom, they're ready for. Oh my God, I'll get right back to a lot happened there. Okay, all right. Now we're going to come around to here. Those three movies and clips, I think it's the amalgam of Bob's narrative, the tools that he used in order to make it, the collaboration that he always had with all of the actors that involved, and that magnificent serendipity that goes into the nature of a shooting day. Here, which we're going to see a clip from now, is almost the antithesis of an awful lot of that. Very specific sets with all sorts of moving platforms and whatnot in order to make it palpable. So much so that we had a 1-week workshop at a hotel in Santa Monica where we just set up a mock-up of the camera position and the set, and we just workshopped it to see how intricate is this going to be.
And to put the scenes up. And make sure that they were working.
Right.
Right.
So
it was kind of like theater rehearsal. It was like a black box theater that we did.
Right. But
except that we shot it.
And what was left over is going to last forever. So there were times that we went to 27 takes, full takes, 47 takes in which it fell apart. We went back, but it was impossible to walk away until serendipity was almost wrung out of it, outside of stuff that we tried to incorporate it.
So it's going to be really interesting in seeing these clips out of context because is anyone here seen the movie? I don't think you have, right? No. Okay. Oh, you have. Okay. Well,
are you guys all AFI students or no? So you just love movies.
Right, yeah. Okay.
How many people love movies that are in here? All right.
There you go. All right. Well, yeah. So.
All right. Here's a clip from the movie. Unlike
Here's
anyone
a clip from the movie that will be in your theaters very soon.
Anyone you've ever seen. And we do not and will not have for quite some time a deal with the streamers because this is not meant for streaming. That's all I can say. All right, roll clip number 4.
I don't know. Is Bill Block here?
Bill Block.
Did he show up? Oh, okay. I thought he might be here. Okay. I just wanted to say that Bill Block, who was the bravest man in Hollywood, who had the conviction and courage to make this movie. I was going to give him a shout out.
Now, also in that, you don't see the cast of everybody who has ever been alive in the planet Earth because it begins with the era of the dinosaurs. There's Native Americans. There's other families that live in that house while it's being born, while it's being built. You get a sense of what Bob was able to do as far as going the transitions from one to the next. But there's other times where the walls disappear and a primordial forest grows up and two people fall in love about 800 years ago.
So the audience's view is in one fixed position on the earth. And time and life passes past the camera. And that's what and that's how we made the movie. And that's what you just saw. That's how we do that.
And we all owe it to Johnny Carson and Jerry Lewis for 1960, whatever it is, saying there's such a thing as a school for cinema. But Bob Zemeckis, ladies and gentlemen, is coming out.
Now, you want to talk just briefly about the de-aging makeup a little bit?
Okay, all right. Did you notice how young Robin and I looked in that? Okay, everybody, let's just put it this way. A lot of people are shitting their pants because you could say that this is a use of quote-unquote AI. The visual, the way they de-aged us is in two very specific parts. One is, thanks to the speed with which the tools work at now, literally the size of files and the speed with which a computer works, between myself and Robin, Paul Bettany and also Rachel, they took 8 million images of us from the web. They scraped the web for photos of us in every era that we've ever been. Every event we've held, every movie still, every family photo that might have existed anywhere. And they put that into the box. Was it, I don't know, what is it, deep fake technology, whatever you want to call it.
Very fast computing.
Okay, leave it at that. Very fast computing. Then they would create that look of 17 and 22 and 27 and 35. Then we went into hair and makeup for the same amount of time that would you go into hair and makeup for a standard movie. Very specific wigs. My ears were moved up and back and glued to the side of the head. We had all sorts of pinching that going on because the amount of skin that we showed was going to show up in the process and become I guess just more expensive. So this combination of this incredibly fast computing and the same makeup techniques that have been used since Lon Chaney was performing in the Silence was it. But the thing that is amazing about it is it happened in real time. We did not have to wait for 8 months of post-production. There were 2 monitors on the set. One was the actual feed from the lens, and the other was just a nanosecond slower of us deep faked. So we could see ourselves in real time right then and there, how we were moving, what our body position was. And I'm going to tell you right now, as you can see, a 17-year-old leaps up off the couch with a different alacrity than a 68-year-old man leaps up off the couch, and we had to make it happen. All the stuff they see, Bob always said, "Well, you walk into your own close-up and you walk off," and that sounds like really like super easy. It's math. It's math, and it's stagehands moving stuff in and sliding it around.
But like we said earlier, the reason that the illusion, any film illusion, I mean, my favorite visual effect in cinema is the close-up, because it's a special effect. You can't see it anywhere in life. You can only see it in a movie, and it's completely fake. I mean, you ever see an actor? You all done it on your sets. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. You're looking at a piece of tape. You got 20 guys surrounding you wearing shorts, and you got to emote your emotion, and that's what it is. But anyway, getting back to this, the illusion works because of the performance. That's what makes it work. I mean, Tom and Robin were able, and Paul and Kelly, they were able to look at the playback, see themselves very glitchy, but in youth makeup in real time, and go back and say, "Oh God, yeah, I gotta move quicker. I gotta raise my voice a little bit more, and actually hone the performance to actually perform." It's exactly as if they had old age makeup on, and they had to move like they were 30 years older. They would look at the playback and go, "Oh yeah, I gotta be a little bit more bent over. I gotta move a little slower." This is the same thing, but on the other direction.
The other thing too is that everything in the frame works, as you notice, the stuff that's on TV and the stuff that's out the window. We have scenes where there's 22 people in that same living room, and everybody is identifiable. Everybody does something that is recognizable in the kind of like miasma movement that goes along in the scene. Can you talk about the Frank Capra quote? Based on what we did here, because it was essentially oneers, as we say. You make movies. It's all in one setup. I went back and looked at a bunch of Preston Sturges films, because so much of his stories are told one set, one setup. You can do the same thing with like the Philadelphia Story with James Stewart and Cary Grant. The camera does not move, but there is so much dialogue and intent in it that if you're looking at it from a purely pace aspect of it or the demands of a performance, what it means is you pick up your cues, you do not wait, you don't allow yourself that time to think, which is a luxury when you know it's going to be cut into close-ups or two shots. We can only do it in real time, and one of the things we noticed was this fascinating thing. We would think we would do it regularly, and it would just be as slow as molasses, and we would literally take, "Hey, you guys need to take 45 seconds out of this scene." All right, well, let's speed it up. We got down to the point where we thought we were just talking way too fast. But Bob told this story about Frank Capra.
Yeah, well, and I think it's in his book, Name Above the Title, where the early, you know, the right after sound came into the movies, the early filmmakers were talking about how they came up with the understanding that once the actors were reduced to 2 dimensions and then magnified on the screen, that it seemed to slow their performances down. So they would tell the actors to accelerate their performance when they were shooting, so that once it was put on the screen, it felt like it was natural. And we were seeing that happen. Right.
We discovered that when we were doing the week-long workshop out in the hotel there, because Bob was saying, well, it's kind of like theater. It's kind of like theater. I said, hey, Bob, even with theater, man, you got specials and you got motions and you got all this kind of stuff that gives you a type of focus. And what we had there, important stuff happens when someone's all the way back looking out the window and they do not get, I mean, I'm there with the birth of babies and the Native American, scenes where a baby is born, 800 years ago, and it happens at a distance. But it's just the nature of the cinematic palette here that it lands on you with the same sort of weight that it would be if you had a bunch of different cuts and shot the thing all day. I will tell you, who's actors in here? Any actors? All right, so you know how you work all morning long on the master? And you think, wow, we got the master. And you're going to spend the rest of the goddamn day carving it up into the coverage? And you just think, we're going to have to recreate these moments until 9 o'clock tonight. And we'll have to constantly be remade up. We're going to have to get back to the motive place again. We're going to have to go there. If it's angry, you got to have the energy. If it's sad, you got to have the emotions. It's bone chilling. The luxury, at the same time, the pressure of doing this 17 or 42 times and then being able to walk away, not having to go back and recreate that stuff. Robin and I have both said we are so spoiled. We're never going to want to make a movie the old-fashioned way ever again, because you give it at 100% then, and you don't have to go and regurgitate 100% at 5:30 in the evening, 4 hours after you've done it for the first place. It's an incredible workout for an actor.
So we hope you enjoy it when you see it.
And AFI and keep going. Here you go. Isn't it great to have a school of cinema?
Yeah.
Because
great.